Bim, bam, boom, bop, pow. We're back with another every faction tier list for unit classes. We have light cavalry, war beasts, heavy cavalry left. We have chaff infantry, mid-tier infantry, and high-tier infantry. And then we have monstrous units. Let's do monstrous units, I guess. Just separate this out. Let's get rid of all these guys. Didn't grab anything up there. Nice. Grab all these guys. Didn't grab anything there. Nice. Boom. Here we go. So how this works, in case you haven't seen any of these before, I take an entire unit category, in this case, monstrous, beasts, war beasts, that kind of thing. And we rank them against each other for their efficiency and their performance. This isn't a campaign-specific list. This isn't a multiplayer-specific list. It's just how strong is this unit when it's plopped into an arena versus other units of its caliber, right? Two things. One, I don't consider specific campaign mechanics when I'm talking about these units. Like, Throt the Unclean buffs Rat Ogres. Cool, but Ikaclaw doesn't. So what's your point? Like, that's not the unit strength. That's Throt's strength. We're not ranking Throt. We're just ranking base Rat Ogres. Not technologies, none of that nonsense. And two, I mentioned this in the last video, depending on when these came out, but some people have been wondering why I talk about gold so much. Gold is a placeholder for how rare and significant a unit is. When I compare, I used this example last time too, but when I compare a Savage Orc to a Skaven Slave, that list would not be very interesting. It would be Savage Orc, Skaven Slave is worse. And that's maybe not the best example, but if you don't factor in cost, these tier lists are insanely boring. Which one costs the most? It's S. Which one costs the least? D, because it's worse. Its stats are going to be worse. But that doesn't factor in rarity. Skaven Slaves would never attack you one Skaven Slave versus one Savage Orc. Oh wow, the Savage Orc strangled him to death. That was interesting. That's one Savage Orc is going to usually be fighting 4 or 5 Skaven Slaves. Okay, could the 4 or 5 Skaven Slaves take him? That's more of what this list is comparing, and cost is an easy metric to do that. Skaven Slaves are 125, 150 gold. Savage Orcs are 550 gold. So you can have about 4.5 Skaven Slaves to a Savage Orc. All right. And I would say, even in that situation, this isn't that list, but I would still say a Savage Orc beats all of them, so he'll be higher on the list. So that's why I talk about gold a lot, is it's just a placeholder of how significant this unit is. Starting us off, the Skaven Rat Ogres. Always start with Skaven. And Rat Ogres are going to go in A tier. Rat Ogres are very cost effective. 700 gold for monstrous infantry with decently high stats, frenzy, armor piercing, decent leadership, honestly, as far as monstrous infantry go. Rat Ogres are quite solid. They have low armor, so they are slightly weak to missiles, but even then they're fast enough and do enough damage to infantry and enough impact damage that they can run down missiles quite nicely regardless. And their crazy low price point for monstrous infantry makes them very, very strong. Their really only weakness is that lack of armor. So yeah, definitely an A tier unit. Very strong. Rat Ogres are a staple in the roster, but I think any roster would love to have Rat Ogres. Kroxigors, basic Kroxigors, not the sacred Kroxigors, I don't believe. I think those are later on. Basic Kroxigors will go B for basic. Honestly, C. Actually, C. For 1,000 gold, they don't have enough missile resistance to withstand like Huntsman or Handgunner fire, so they'll still die to range shots pretty quickly, but they're not nearly as fast as like Rat Ogres, and they are more expensive, so they have a harder time catching up to things that are skirmishing them or punching through front lines faster. They have really slow animations, and their impact damage isn't nearly as much as Rat Ogres, it feels like. So just comparing them to Rat Ogres, I feel like these units are almost equivalent, but Rat Ogres are 300 gold cheaper. Equivalent for like, you know, Rat Ogres are faster, while Kroxigors are tankier, that kind of stuff. But I think they are equally good units, but one of them costs a lot more. So I don't know. I would rather have Rat Ogres than Kroxigors in a lot of situations. Kroxigors are too slow to catch a lot of things they want to catch, and they're decent at getting through front lines. They have an anti-infantry stat, I guess, but it's pretty whatever. So Kroxigors just need a little bit more oomph or to be a little cheaper. Zoats. Zoats are also going to be in C. Zoats are decent versus large targets. They run down cavalry, okay. They duel giant monsters, okay. They're not great at clearing through infantry. They're pretty susceptible to ranged fire, even with their scaly skin. Again, kind of like the Kroxigors, I don't have any problems with their stats or how they perform in battle. My problem is their high price point for what they offer. They're kind of priced like an elite unit when they're a fine unit. So Zoats need a little tamping down. They have some bound spells, but the bound spells are not nearly worth the cost you get out of Zoats, so Though it's also in C tier. Decent little line break. They're more like line backers than line breakers. Stone Trolls. And I got these pictures from the asset kit CA sends me and other content creators. So some of the pictures are old ones. I don't know where the new ones are. And I'm not going to go clip out every single one in Photoshop from all of the game. That is ridiculous. Stone Trolls. A. Stone Trolls have spell resistance, a decent amount of armor, very high weapon strength that is almost all armor piercing, self-regeneration. I think, did I say spell resist? I forget if I said spell resist. And I think they even have a little bit of missile resist in there. So Stone Trolls are relatively tanky as far as trolls go. They have the weaknesses of trolls, weakness to fire, and low leadership. But aside from those two things, they're very, very effective. Yeah, good guys. Do a ton of damage to infantry, cavalry, single entities, archers if they can catch them. They are a bit spendy, so you haven't been seeing them as much. But they are still good. Stone Trolls are still good, especially paired with any leadership or immune to psychology effects. Stone Trolls can do a lot of work for you. Stone Trolls still very solid. River Trolls, much less solid. Those are back in C. River Trolls are one of those weird things where I have to go entirely off gut feel because their stat card isn't that bad, but their performance is. I feel like their stat card looks fine. Melee attack, melee defense, damage, it all looks good. And then they have that slimy odor thing, the -5 melee attack in their aura, and you're like, okay, that's cool, that's cool. And then I use River Trolls, and they do no damage, and they die instantly, and they rout. I don't know what their deal is, but River Trolls just suck for some reason. They're pretty bad. They're not D tier. They still have self-regeneration of trolls. They do have some debuffs, like I mentioned, so they're not the worst thing in the world, but they are quite bad. River Trolls, bad. Sacred Croxagores. Now, those are a B tier unit. Higher stats than their basic Croxagore friends, magic damage to give them a little bit more of a niche here and there, and I feel like they just have better attack animations and charge animations to get extra damage out onto infantry. So good versus infantry, good versus cavalry, still pretty weak against archers, not amazing versus single entities. Sacred Croxagores, you pay an arm and a leg for them, but you usually get exactly what you pay for, which does put them at B tier. They're about as cost efficient as they are costly. Ripperdactyls. I'll also go with B tier, actually. I was tempted to put them in A, but they are very squishy. So Ripperdactyls will reward you the better you play with them. So if you play perfectly, they're up in the S or the A. But I think that lack of forgiveness, if you forget them for even a little bit in front of skirmish cav or archers, or you forget them in a bad melee fight, they're going to evaporate before your eyes, and then you messed up big time. So their lack of forgiving nature and still high price point is going to put them down in B, but Ripperdactyls get a ton of damage out if you get rear charges with them, or you opt them into good fights, like catching an archer out in the middle of nowhere, or cavalry is distracted and you jump down behind it. Ripperdactyls will do amazing. They can carry whole games, but you do have to hold their hand. Rotting Promethean Gunnery Mobs. That is an S tier monster. They are the exact opposite of holding their hand. Pretty slow, but that's the only bad thing I have to say about them. They're pretty slow. Otherwise, these guys are incredibly tanky. They have 360 shooting shotguns that fire on their back even when they're in melee with something, making them able to drag down much larger monsters than themselves better than you'd think they were capable of. Good impact damage on infantry. Their high armor and decent melee defense can make them get through basic spears much better than a lot of the other monstrous infantry on this list, so even basic spears can't stop them. You need halberds to lock these guys down. And their hard crab shells are really good against archers, so even basic archers have a hard time taking these guys down. Ugh, Rotting Promethean Gunnery Mobs are fantastic. They're very, very strong units. Basic Rotting Prometheans are going to go down to C. A lot of the same positives as the Prometheans mobs, but the shotgunners on the back do a lot of work. Like, these guys don't do nearly as well versus single entities as the shotgunners do, because the shotguns on the back shooting at point blank range is where a lot of the damage comes from. Rotting Prometheans for 1,050 gold don't do enough damage and aren't tanky enough to really pop up into this list in the B or A category. They're not that good versus cavalry unless the cavalry just walks into them and stays there. They're not that great versus infantry unless the infantry is non-anti-large, non-armor piercing, and even then it's not a quick way to kill them. They're gonna have a very slow death. So I think the shotgun mobs are just a lot better, and the improvement is noticeable. Mourngulls, after some recent changes, I am gonna put these guys in A tier. with Stalk, and I believe they have the Hunger, so they have regeneration as long as they're in melee. Stalk, good jumping animations to get in on top of archers, good disruption there. They are a little weird for monstrous infantry. They're not that good versus a lot of cavalry. Like, they'll get some damage out, but cost effectively, they'll trade down. Like, cheaper cavalry than they are will trade well into them. Like, they'll beat it, but be pretty dead afterwards. But they make up for it by being really, really good at chasing down and surprising and ambushing infantry, which is something. So good job, Morgul's. And they've also recently been doing really well against single entities that the Vampire Coast has needed to take out in the late game. So Morgul's surprising me. I'm going to put them up in A. Good job, lads. Just avoid basic archers and cavalry. Animated Hulks. That is another A tier monster. For only 500 gold, these guys are incredible. 500 gold, big caveat there, but this is one of the cheapest monstrous infantry in the entire game, if not the cheapest. Still have armor piercing damage, still have good impact damage. They are weak to archers, weak to basic spears, weak to a lot of things, but they are fast, they are cheap, and they hit decently hard to provide you a little bit of space for your ranged units to get more damage out. Animated Hulks do everything you want them to do at a bargain of a price point. Basic Ushapti, gonna go in B. Basic Ushapti are weird. They're the exact opposite of the River Trolls. Their stats are pathetically bad, but for some reason I feel like they perform well in game, even though their stats are really low. So I don't know how that happens, but Ushapti have been impressing me in all the games they play in, and in my Arc in the Black campaign I have with my friends, I have one army that is 18 Ushapti, and then a Shadows Caster, and a Tomb King Lord. So yeah, I'm enjoying my Ushapti 18 stack that I've buffed up a ton. Ushapti are nice. They're very fast as far as monstrous infantry go, and they have really good attack animations. So they're good at cleaving through infantry. They trade fine into cavalry, not amazing, but fine, and they run down archers pretty well. So the only things they're not good at is killing large single entities. Honestly, large single entities just ignore the Ushapti entirely. Vargeists. These guys are gonna get A tier. They're just reskinned Ripperdactyls. All the things I had to say about Ripperdactyls also apply to Vargeists, but Vargeists have higher damage than the Ripperdactyls in my experience. They absolutely tear things apart if they get into melee with it, whereas the Ripperdactyls take a little longer to get those kills, but still very expensive like the Ripperdactyls, very squishy like the Ripperdactyls. If you get them in a bad situation or you let them get shot for a bit, they will disappear before your very eyes. But more people win games off of microing Vargeists well than people that micro Ripperdactyls well. Both have won games solo, but Vargeists do it much more often and quicker. So Vargeists, very, very strong, deserve their A tier. Not quite S. Crypt Ghouls have taken some nerfs. I'm going to put them down in B. A, B, A, B, A. Honestly, yeah, they're still A. Self-regeneration for a monstrous unit at this price point is very strong, still have good damage output, and they're undead, so they're incredibly tenacious. They will keep fighting and regenerating to the absolute last man, and they're nearly impossible to get rid of. You won't factor in corpse carts. That's why, before you get mad at me for even thinking about putting them in B, I'm not factoring in the corpse cart. I'm thinking about just the crypt ghoul on its own. The crypt horror, sorry, on its own. Usually these guys are buffed up by corpse carts. That gives them even more healing, even more stats and all that stuff. So on their own, they're just a barely A tier unit, maybe B tier. With corpse carts factored in, that's where you get up into the A and maybe S territory. But on its own, it's just a solid, back-breaking, monstrous big lad. It's fine. Basic Trolls, D. First D tier. Absolutely terrible. None of the redeeming qualities of Stone Trolls. These guys technically have armor piercing, but their leadership is so low, their armor is so low, and they're weak to fire damage. They just get shocked out of any fight. They never get their damage out. They can't surround big monsters because they're so cowardly, and even when they do, you get nothing back as far as damage goes. These things are terrible. Speaking of which, basic Norscan Trolls, joining them in D. They're trolls without a gimmick. There's no reason to take them over any other trolls that exist in the game. They are terrible. Every roster that has access to basic trolls has access to better trolls. Is this a Chaos Troll? You have Armored Chaos Trolls. Is this a Norscan Troll? You have Norscan Ice Trolls or Skin Wolves or Famir. There's no reason to take basic trolls. They are terrible. Basic Chaos Spawn. Gonna go in C tier. Unbreakable and high weapon strength are the only two nice things I have to say about Chaos Spawn. Their low armor make them The low armor makes them very squishy. They don't have high enough melee defense to fend off basic spears. So basic spears and halberds will trade very well into Chaos Spawn. Cavalry does okay versus them. Archers do very well versus Chaos Spawn because they're unshielded and unarmored. So they're just kind of unbreakable. I think they're 950 gold on the basic Chaos roster without any marks on them. They're not expensive, but they're not cheap either. So they're just kind of C tier, a little underperforming for what you get. You might as well go with a different Monstrous option. Yeah, they need more damage. They need more love. Skin Wolves! S tier, baby! Skin Wolves are OP. Incredibly high weapon strength, physical resistance, speed, regeneration, everything you could want out of a unit. Skin Wolves are the epitome of great monstrous units. Great versus infantry, good at running down archers, really good at fighting cavalry. The only thing they don't do incredible at is fighting armored cavalry, and even then they do okay. Skin Wolves are the backbone of the Norscan roster. They have been for a long time, and they are one of the best monstrous units that has existed in this game, dragging a terrible roster into relevancy since 1992. Norscan Ice Trolls, still in C, better than basic trolls, but still pretty bad. Have Frostbite for a little bit of speed debuff, slightly higher price point, but still, they're weak to fire. Their leadership's still pretty low, and their damage output is rather lacking. Norscan Ice Trolls just don't feel very good to me when I see them, which is rare. They just suck. The only campaign they're any good in is Throgs. If you're taking Norscan Ice Trolls with Wolfric, it's usually just a bad time. So you need Throgs buffs to make them good, which makes them themselves bad. Fimir, great weapon or otherwise. Fimir have been rocking it recently. I'm gonna put him in B. Good armor, armor sundering, missile resistance, magic damage. Lots of good things to say about Fimir. They have great weapon or regular variants. So they have bonus versus infantry or large, depending on how much you want to pay for them. The only thing that keeps them out of A tier is Fimir are some of the most expensive monstrous infantry we've been talking about. And for their price point, they don't scale perfectly. You know, where it's not like, you know, you pay 1,600 for them and they do 2,500 worth of damage. They usually just do about 1,600 damage worth. Like, archers can't kill them super fast, but they don't kill front lines that quickly. They don't take down big monsters that quickly. They're just kind of okay. Skin Wolves outperform them in a lot of metrics for a lot less money. So, I don't know. I don't dislike the Fimir, but it's hard to put them higher than B. They are solid. Treekin, going D. Some campaign players are going to get mad at me and say they're really good in these specific blobs with these specific things that give them these specific buffs. But without buffs, Treekin are not good. Like, without any campaign buffs, lord buffs, spell buffs, anything like that, just low melee stats besides melee defense, high armor, decent HP. So they're just kind of tanky. But then there's no reason for them to be tanky. Like, what are you doing? What are you defending? What is going on? If they're on a different roster, maybe they'd be a little higher, I guess. Like, if you're trying to do the theory crafting of like, well, if every roster had access to them, Treekin could be good on like Skaven because of their high leadership and stuff. But I would argue they're decently high price point for how little surface area they cover. Most of the time, you're doing more damage to your army by spending your funds on Treekin rather than anything else. Because, like, money is finite. So you buy Treekin, you don't have a Rat Ogre, for that Skaven example. You don't have a Rat Ogre and part of a Skaven slave, and it's like, oh, okay, well, my Rat Ogres also blocked, but they were also faster, so they could get between cavalry and my Poison Globes, or, you know, they could help hold the front line but actually deal some damage. They could help rush if I'm getting outshot, or if the opponent uses spells to take out my weapons teams, the Rat Ogres can become an offensive unit very quickly. Treekin are just very, very one note, and they're okay at that one note. We stand in spot, we don't route. Okay, I don't know. I'm unimpressed. I don't really like Treekin. I think they're a waste of money. That's the same Chaos Spawn, just a different picture, so I'm gonna skip it. Minotaurs. I believe I factored in all variants of Minotaurs. These are the Beastmen ones. Minotaurs shields, dual weapons, or great weapons. Minotaurs are S tier. Very strong monsters with immune to psychology as soon as they enter melee. Crazy high stats, really good armor piercing, incredible charge bonus. They are low armor, but they're not that expensive for how much damage they provide. They're cheaper than Famir by a significant amount, and they outdamage Famir. Minotaurs have been the backbone of a lot of Beastmen rushes for quite a while, and Khorne Minotaurs are just them with higher stats, and they have been the staple of Khorne's roster since this game started. So yeah, Minotaurs, very, very, very strong. An excellent unit. I'm sure the Khorne Minotaurs will join these guys up in S tier, but these guys are a little cheaper than their Khorne variants, a little less armor, otherwise quite solid. Armored Chaos Trolls. Armored Chaos Trolls will make it into B tier. All the same things we said about other trolls, except these guys have significant armor, so basic archers can't just take them out, and basic heavy cavalry lacking any armor piercing will lose against armored chaos trolls, because their armor piercing shots right back at the cavalry will win out in the long run with their regeneration, but that extra armor really helps quite a lot with the other weaknesses other trolls have, and you don't pay a premium to get that extra armor. You pay just a bit, so. Armored chaos trolls deserve a spot in B, just because they have a gimmick. Dragon Ogres, gonna go down and C. Dragon Ogres are Zotes without the bound spells and a little more damage, but my main reason to put them in C, even though they've gotten a couple cost reductions here and there, Dragon Ogres are just janky, and I don't like it. And they've burned me too many times for me to put them higher, where I'll like get them in a good situation, and then out of like 16 Dragon Ogres, 2 will make contact with my target, and the other 14 will mill about behind it and just go like, man, when Paul and Steve are done fighting, I'm going to get in there and we're going to go fight them. And it's like, dude, just surround it. Just like all of you get in there and surround it. And you can micro them well and get them to surround something sometimes. And other times, even if you surround something, a couple just won't swing and they'll get in each other's way and they're all whatever. But there is that once in a blue moon where Dragon Ogres will successfully surround something correctly and they'll all swing and they'll beat the paste out of something. But it's too few and far between, and I've spent too much micro and too much time trying to make these guys any good. They're going into C tier. I'm sick of dealing with them. They are not useless, but bad. Chaos Spawn of Tzeentch. They get bumped up to B. For only a little bit more money than a basic Chaos Spawn, you can get Barriers and Armor Sundering, which can help Forsaken front lines quite a lot, can help your more Berserker-type infantry get through armored front lines, and you still have Chaos Spawn afterwards. They get up to B tier for just being a little bit better at breaking through things than their Chaos Spawn cousins, and they provide some nice utility. Love that. Chaos Spawn of Slaanesh, gonna go in C tier. They are linear for me from the Chaos Spawn, where it's like you pay a little bit more and you get Soporific Musk. You reduce enemy melee attack and melee defense by like 5. But I feel like they are still as bad as the other Chaos Spawn once you factor in the cost increase. The Armor Sundering and the shields is huge for the Tzeentch Chaos Spawn. These guys just don't have that, so still just a squishy monstrous infantry that is weak to archers and basic spears. Fiends of Slaanesh. Gonna go in S tier. I debated putting them in A, but they deserve S tier. Serpentine bodies keep them safe from a lot of missiles. Not all missiles, but when volleys get fired at them, a lot of the projectiles will miss. Physical resistance from being demonic, very high weapon strength, and good stats. Their only real weakness is a low armor. Yeah, low armor threshold. I think they only have 35. And then high price point means if you get them in a bad situation with like light spears or something, they're going to take a lot of damage and you're going to have a big whoopsie on your hand. But definitely S tier, because if you don't have a big whoopsie, this unit will do fantastic work for you. So Fiends, very, very good. Gorgers. B, 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 B. Gorgers have gotten some buffs that take them to B tier for me. A stalking, unbreakable ogre unit is quite nice. Very high weapon strength with armor piercing, good stats overall. The only problem with it that keeps it out of being higher on this list is low armor and not so high melee defense. So basic spears can take out a lot of Gorger models very quickly. That is a problem, but they're cheaper than some of the other stuff that's lower on this list. I think they are a flat 1,000 per Gorger, which is quite reasonable. And they can get some cool little Vanguard shenanigans done with their stalking. So Gorgers are all right. You don't see them much in multiplayer for Ogre Kingdoms because it's very hard to stack up Scrag the Slaughter's Cauldron to heal them, but also just Ogres are in a really strong place right now with their other units. I'm sure the units that are coming up will get higher on the list than Gorgers. So when you have access to better units, why bother with the Gorgers? But that doesn't mean Gorgers are bad. Maneaters. Don't hate me, but see. Maneaters with great weapons, Maneaters regular, Maneaters Iron Fists, all go in C tier. Mostly because they aren't better enough like stat wise. I guess I shouldn't compare them to the other ogres, but even compared to other units, I'm going to put man-eaters in C. They're so weak to archers and basic spears, man. They only have 40 armor, not that high melee defense. Only the iron fists are shielded, and I think that's just a bronze shield. So basic archers, skirmish cav, basic spears can really tear these guys down, and they are expensive. They are crazy expensive. They require troll guts or meat feast from their ogre army abilities or caster to keep them up and around. So you need to dedicate your whole army around man-eaters if you're taking them. You can't just throw these guys and hope for the best. Like, they'll die really fast. And I also have had the dragon ogre issue with these guys where they'll pile up in an awkward way, so only a couple of them are swinging, so they can require a lot of micro to get good workout, and there's just better options. So no, I think the man-eaters are C. Sorry, not sorry. Iron Guts, now that is an A tier unit, maybe even S tier. Incredibly high armor, high damage, high stats, bonus versus infantry at a relatively decent price point, only 1,100 gold for each of the Iron Guts. They are really good versus infantry, really good versus cavalry, great at chasing down archers, great at impact damage. The only thing they're not amazing at is fighting single entities, and even then they are pretty good. Not amazing, but they're pretty good at killing single entities. The only thing that keeps them out of S tier, in my opinion, is a relatively high price point for the damage you get out of them. Everything above them does do more damage, and skin molds are even cheaper. So Iron Guts are A, bordering on S, just bordering on it, but I couldn't quite bring myself to do it. Basic Mournfang Cavalry, I'm going in D tier. Flying Taco will hate me, but everyone else should be fine with it. Mournfang Cavalry are janky and strange. They feel like they should be better than they are. On paper, their stats look fine, but in-game, they have so much model collision and extra jank that stops them from getting into proper melee contact with a lot of other things, that their models individually end up fighting like 5 or 6 V1s, and they usually get dragged down for not a cheap price point. They're as expensive as man-eaters in a lot of situations. $13.50, I think, for some of the models. Mournfang Cav are really difficult to get to use. The only one that might break out of D tier is the Mournfang Cavalry with great weapons, but I don't think it's that far above them that it's worth me digging out that portrait of the Mournfang Cav with great weapons. So just lumping all three of them together, they're all terrible. If you really want to die on the hill of the Mournfang Cav with great weapons, sure, put that one in C. I disagree, but I could see the argument for that one. If you think Mournfang Iron Fists are out of D tier, then I just don't think we're watching the same Ogres games. Crushers! Crushers are S tier. Essentially multi-model chariots that are also anti-large duelists. Ugh, Crushers can kill infinite infantry, infinite heavy cav, any single entity that comes across their path. Crushers are ominous and scary. Decently armored, still kind of weak to archers, as a lot of Monstrous infantry are if left to their own devices, but Crushers are very, very fast. They're much more like cavalry in speed, so they can easily run over to archers or even dodge shots on the way over. Crushers have carried a lot of games by being microed properly, and unlike the Vargeists and Ripperdactyls, they can also take a bit of a beating before dying off, so it's not even like if you forget them for 1 second, they just disappear. Crushers are amazing and very powerful units, though they are one of the most expensive in the game. Chaos Spawn of Nurgle are going to go in D tier. More expensive than other Chaos Spawn, like the regular Chaos Spawn, and their only thing is that they have slightly higher melee defense, which is a big whoop-de-doo with a sarcastic finger wag. They still just die to basic spears, so that extra melee defense isn't helping them at all, and then they're incredibly weak to archers, and you paid a pretty penny for nothing. Chaos Spawn of Nurgle are my least favorite of all the Chaos Spawn variants, and I don't think highly of most of them. Pox Riders, also going to go in D tier. The Barons of the Bog Regiment of Renown is the only Pox Rider that's any good. The regular Pox Rider is just paying more for a Plague Toad to do just as much damage as a Plague Toad and die to all the same things a Plague Toad does. It is terrible. I hate them. They are garbage. Pox Riders, stay in D tier. I hate you. Plague Drones of Nurgle, also going in D tier. Very expensive to not be that tanky, not do that much damage, not be that fast, and you have no ranged capacity. I don't know what the point of you is. You're terrible. I hate that. Ugh, I hate Plague Drones. Plague Drones are awful. I've seen a lot of people try and use them. They never work out. They are hot garbage. Warbears! Warbear Riders. Warbears and Bear Riders. That's an A tier unit. Very strong, anti-large, armor-piercing. Pretty fast. Tanky-ish. Good little duelists. They're good lads. The only thing they're really weak to is archers. Yeah, just archers. Because they can beat infantry and cavalry and all that stuff. I guess like halberds. Yeah, they're weak to halberds, but sure, that goes without saying, I guess. Halberds and archers can beat warbear riders. They are pretty expensive. Not the fastest in the world, but they're fast enough to get their job done. Buyer Blood makes them unbreakable for a little bit, usually making them difficult to terror out from big monsters, so they can stay in the fight almost the last man and take down those big monsters. Like warbear riders, they're quite solid. A. Chaos Spawn of Khorne still goes in D tier next to Nurgle. They just get higher weapon strength and maybe more melee attack than Chaos Spawn and Spawn of Slaanesh, but again, you're paying a pretty penny for them, and it's not enough. It's not like these guys berserk their way through front lines super easily and they crush everyone in their path. And it's like, oh, okay, you're getting what you pay for. It's like, no, they seem to perform comparably to other Chaos Spawn, and you paid more for them. Hooray! So they don't have the defensive stats of the Nurgle one. They don't have the defensive and offensive stats of the Slaanesh one. They're just bad. Chaos Spawn of Khorne, terrible. D tier. Back up to S, though, with the other Khorne monster. Bam! Minotaurs. Minotaurs of Khorne. More expensive than their Beastmen cousins, but they do feel like they do more damage overall. They're a little more courageous. They're a little tankier with extra armor. These are the angry moo cows of the Blood God, and they deserve to be an S tier for hideous amounts of violence they can commit. Bile Trolls, really glad I waited until the patch for this. Bile Trolls are going into A tier. Bile Trolls with their new vomitous stomach acid little attribute they can apply on melee with the speed debuff and the leadership debuff. They are so fun to use right now. I am enjoying myself a ton with them. They do decent damage. They have self-regeneration, all that crap, but they're really fun to use against low leadership factions. I'm having so much fun with Bile Trolls. Oh, they're the monstrous infantry Nurgle desperately needed, and he finally got it. Let's go, Bile Trolls. A tier for you. For a less impressive unit, we're gonna go with Plague Ogres. I think after their buffs, they're probably B tier. I've used them a couple times, and they feel decidedly okay. Plague Ogres are okay. Mostly the Great Weapon variant for their anti-large, but yeah, just kind of like Man-Eaters, a little tankier than that. Some pretty solid stats. Nurgle's Plague Ogres are solid. They're fine. Weak to archers like the other Man-Eaters are, but aside from that, they're pretty good. They can handle most cavalry, most single entities quite well, deal with infantry, and they feel a little tankier than their regular ogre cousins. Kadai Fireborn, as much as I love you, you guys are C tier. I keep trying to make them work because I think they are so cool, but they're weak to too many things. They don't do that well against cavalry in a lot of situations. They still feel like they take a lot of damage. They're weak to archers, weak to basic spears, weak to halberds, all that crap. And then they also have demonic instability crumbling once they get below a certain health threshold, which, cool, bro. Like, that's kind of neat, but honestly, you don't normally get demonic instability from full health or 3/4 health anyway. So by the time your passive that makes you unbreakable wears off, that's about the time you would be breaking anyway. So they just kind of disappear in a puff, and they are very expensive for what you get out of them. They're 1,400 gold a pop, which anything above them I would take. Like, if people are like, what Gorgers aren't B tier? I mean, I would rather have a Gorger than a Kadai Fireborn for sure. And the Kadai Fireborn is 400 gold more expensive, so not for me. Yetis! Yetis are B. They're fine. They're like trolls without regeneration, some frostbite to keep things near you, some nice slow utility, good armor piercing stats. Yetis are fine. Yeah, good supportive stats, good offensive stats, just not that tanky, and they are a little expensive, so that ends them up in B tier instead of A, but not a lot of complaints about the weird snowmen of the north. Golgi's Man-Eaters going up to S tier. 1,600 gold. These guys are very expensive, but they are decently well armored for ogres units. They are kind of fire and forget, where the regular Man-Eaters aren't. Why I separated them out is because I think there's such a big difference in their performance versus other Man-Eaters. Other Man-Eaters were a bit of a meme, but as soon as the Omens of Destruction's DLC came out, you start to see Golgi's Man-Eaters about 1 per ogre build, sometimes 2, sometimes none, but there's on average about 1 per ogre build. They are very strong, and for such an expensive unit, they need some decent tankiness to hold on, and their adaptive tactics melee stats helps them out when they're in a losing situation. Their armor keeps them safe from basic archers, and they're good versus everything else. Golgi's Man-Eaters are fantastic and definitely deserve to be up in S tier. Blood Beasts of Khorne gonna pop up into A, maybe S. S or A would be my debate. they're juiced rat ogres. They cost more than rat ogres, but they do more damage than rat ogres. Otherwise, they're the same unit. Fast, lightly armored, monstrous infantry, frenzy, tons of damage, but quickly die when pressed by archers or spears. Good for running down cavalry, good for running down archers. They're definitely a rush unit, not as much defensive. All right, what do we got? Mangler Squigs and Bull Centaur Renders. Got it. Mangler Squigs, after their nerfs, they launched at an S tier and they fall all the way to D tier after they got way over-nerfed. These guys got taken out back and shot. Mangler Squigs are terrible now. Their stats are abysmal. They're kind of supposed to be this armor-piercing pseudo chariot type thing that can just rip through infantry and knock them all out of the way while it goes for the archers and whatnot. And then if cavalry challenge it, they explode when they die, so they can blow up more expensive cavalry. But that unit type seemed to be too toxic, and the community backlash was pretty intense, myself included. So then CA just took a shotgun to it and was like, we'll deal with it later, and they might come back and rebuff them. But right now, Mangler Squigs are just terrible. Very squishy for their price point, and when they die, they explode usually in your own troops because they usually die before they even get to the front line. Mangler Squigs are just really bad. They don't even do that much damage anymore. And finally, Bull Centaur Renders. I'm debating between B and C. I'm going to put them in B, but I could see an argument for C. They're very expensive, high stats, high damage, elite units. All those nice things to say about them. My only negative is a huge negative. Well, I guess the high price point is a negative. But the other thing is, like the Dragon Ogres, I just can't seem to get the Bull Centaur Renders to behave and properly surround something or properly spread out and fight cavalry. They just get all clumped up and only a couple of them ever attack at a time, and it really bothers me. I just have so many issues with this unit type. These like big centaur models that don't really want to play nice with each other and just get in each other's way, like the Zotes, like the Dragon Ogres, like Bull Centaur Renders. It bothers me. But they do get into B tier where their other cousins are down in C because they have higher stats than their cousins. They fight better, they fight harder, they feel like they do more damage. So the responsive problems keep them in B instead of A or S. Otherwise, they're quite solid. And bam! There's all your monstrous infantry or monstrous beasts or whatever monstery things. Hopefully you like this list. If you didn't, I did my best. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Subscribe, yes.